All right. Excited for this one. This is another podcast for our backpack series, where we're just talking to people within the backpack industry, companies, and learning more about their packs from a Switzerland kind of standpoint, right? So I'm excited today to have the Chief Marketing Officer, Greg Williams from Eberlestock on. Greg, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, I'm really excited to do it. And we've got to know each other a little bit over the last few months, and we have some mutual friends with Limitless Outdoors. So I've heard nothing but good things about you, and it's exciting to have you on here and just talk to you and get to know more about Eberlestock.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, the Limitless guys are awesome, and you're right. We have a handful of mutual friends, and I feel like I've heard a ton about you recently. You guys are definitely starting to make maybe not starting to, maybe that's not fair, but like really making a name for yourselves, and then you're generous enough that I now have my hands on a Tricer, and we'll talk about that more. But the brand is awesome, and the product is amazing. And like I said, we'll talk about that more. But I'm really appreciative that you've got me on tonight to talk about this.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Yeah, Limitless was like when I first started Tricer, because I'm a Christian. It's like I pulled up punches on that. Everyone knows that. They were like the one company that I wanted to work with so bad, right? Because I just love what they're doing over there. But one that I can say is, and like that's why I have a lot of respect for your packs, is those guys are some of the most abusive people I've ever met when it comes to gear. So like if they're running your stuff and it's holding up, like that says something because those guys have like no regard for their gear. They just
Yeah,
break stuff.
yeah, they do. They are. I mean, we've said it before on podcasts and just in person. Anytime we talk about them, Justin and Colton are two of the most genuine and amazing humans I've ever met, and also two of the most legit hunters I've ever met. I mean, those guys, people still don't really, even if you watch every video they've ever put out, you still don't really understand like A, how good of dudes they are, and B, like how authentic they are in the hunting space. Like they're just awesome, awesome people. And they were the first guys when I took over the head of marketing role. They were the first guys I ever reached out to and said, "Hey, do you want to run our gear?" And they were like, "Yeah, great." And they've just been so awesome to work with over the last 4 years now or so. Nothing but good things to say about those guys, and their content's awesome. So
Yeah, I've got to go closer with, especially with Colton. And me and Colton text a few times a week. So they're just super good dudes, genuine dudes, doing it right, kids, the whole nine, and they freaking hunt hard. Like one of my goals is to go hunting with these guys at some point.
yeah.
I'm actually training just so I can be in shape. Just when I do get the call, I don't embarrass myself. So 10,000 foot view, talking about Eberlestock. When did it start? How'd they get into backpacks? Let's go into the origin story.
Yeah, it's I'll try and keep it somewhat concise because it's a long story, but founded by Glenn Everly, technically in 1985. So Glenn was a Olympian in the 1984 biathlon in the Winter Olympics, and he did some amazing things there. And I'm going to have to again kind of skim over his story slightly. He's told it many times, and it's an incredible story. But basically, was using a rifle stock at the time that weighed like close to I think it was 11 pounds. And Glenn's always just had this spirit of improving things, like just finding ways to make things better. And so he started making his own custom rifle stocks, got him down to I believe it was like 7.4 pounds. And don't quote me on that, but I know it's close to that. And so that obviously gave the American team a huge advantage, shaving that much weight off when you're skiing and shooting. And went against the grain a little bit there. Everybody thought that it had to be like this heavy stock for accurate shooting, and Glenn just realized that that wasn't the case, and so gained a huge advantage in that. Actually, set an Olympic standard that still holds today. Because all the other nations started complaining that he had modified his rifle and that it was too light. So the Olympic Committee came in and said, "Hey, look, he didn't break any rules, so we'll make the rule now. It can't be any lighter than that." So that was really the origin of the company, and our three ring logo actually comes from his design, where he milled or drilled out three holes in the stock in some places that weren't structurally necessary to have a complete piece of wood there, and so he drilled those out, and that's part of how he dropped the weight. But that was 1985, and so it was the Eberly Stock Company, and maintained that through the 80s and 90s. And then in the early 2000s, when 9/11 happened, Glenn wanted to, he had, well, I should back up. He had started making his own packs. So he's a lifelong hunter here in Idaho, an elk hunter, and realized that there really wasn't a great way to pack out meat with the pack that you had on your back. You had to go back to the truck and get a frame and this and the other. And so he sewed up his own pack that eventually became the inspiration for the Just One pack that we still sell today. We have an update coming to that design this year, but it's stayed largely unchanged. And so he was hunting with this pack that he created, and knew that he was going to bring that pack to market at some point. When 9/11 happened, he was a United pilot, and so that was definitely an event that hit home from him. He was a former F4 and A10 pilot in the Air Force, also, and so had a close, obviously history with the military, and wanted to find a way to get, I guess, involved in the global war on terror. Considered going back in the military, and realized that probably wasn't in the cards for him. And so that's where he really brought the designs of his hunting packs to the military side as well, and knew that he could impact mostly snipers by giving them an opportunity or a way of carrying a sniper rifle on their back. The scabbard idea of creating a sort of a sleeve for the rifle to sit on your back, that's still a big part of our packs today, came from his time in the biathlon, where they would sling their rifle on their back and then get into their shooting position and access it from there. So it's a really, it's kind of a spider web story of all the events in Glenn's life, all the amazing things that he's done between the Olympics and being a fighter pilot and a United pilot, all kind of came to a head where ultimately he started this company out of it. And so it went from the Eberlestock company to Eberlestock in 2003. And we've been a packing gear manufacturer since then. Really, the rifle stocks he continued for a while there. We've essentially more or less gotten out of that today, and just focused on what we would call complete gear systems on both the military and the hunting side. Um, Again, have to, for the sake of time, leave a lot of detail out of that. Glenn has told that story much more eloquently and a lot more detail in other places if people are interested. But we have a really unique story, sort of our genesis as a company, in a way that we're really proud of, and is, like I said, I think very authentic and unique in this space.
Yeah, I definitely could say of everyone I'm going to interview for this, you guys are probably gonna be like the most mature company, the oldest company. And it's very rare for a company to be around for 40 years, and you guys have basically been in business for 40 years.
Yeah,
I feel like I need to meet Glenn because I like how he drilled 3 holes in his stock. Like, you can ask any of my, engineers when I work with them, like, I'm like, "Take more out, drill holes."
yeah,
Like, I am like the, "How can I skeletonize this anymore?" type guy, like, to the point where you don't even see it, like, inside of things, I'm removing material, right?
sure.
So that's really neat, I can relate to that. And for that rifle scabbard, that's really what got me into Eberlestock, is I had a bunch of friends running that scabbard on their own packs, and I ended up getting my son an Eberlestock, like, 2 Christmases ago, and getting him that scabbard, and man, I just absolutely love it, and you can run it anywhere, but, like, I think the most recommended, most common way to run it is, like, right up against the pack frame, right behind your back, and it just
Absolutely.
carries your rifle. There's something about having your rifle on the side of your pack where it kind of flops around on you and moves around on you. It doesn't fully lock in, and your gun's getting banged up. With the scabbard, your gun slides right behind your back. It actually, you can buy an accessory. It's like a top cover for it, so your gun's completely taken care of. Especially when you're like doing stuff like I like to backpack hunt. When you're hiking in, for 8 hours, whatever it is, you don't need your rifle out. Most time you're hiking in, it's not even hunting season yet, right? It's before season. You don't need your gun out. I absolutely love that scabbard, and it's probably one of my favorite pieces of gear I have, especially for carrying a rifle. There's nothing better out there to carry a rifle than the Eberlestock rifle scabbard. I can say that for sure.
Yeah, well, Glenn patented that design back in the early 2000s, and so for the longest time, we've been the only ones that have been able to do it. And it's a really unique design that adds a lot of value, safety, personal safety, in the sense that, like,
Mhm.
I can remember the first bull I ever packed out on one of my old military assault packs from when I was in the army, and I wasn't using trekking poles at the time, which was just just me not really understanding mountain hunting and how valuable those are.
Yeah.
And the number of times that I fell and had to like catch myself and almost breaking a wrist and everything else. So to be able to keep your hands free to use trekking poles or to catch yourself, like whatever the case may be, is a real big advantage and a safety thing, honestly. On the note of safety, it does keep the barrel pointed directly at the ground at all times, which is always great. But then safety of the rifle, like you said, I mean, it's going to be padded or protected between the frame and the pack, and so there's really no way to damage the rifle. Where I've definitely, before starting to use Eberlestock products, have definitely dropped a rifle or had the sling slide off my shoulder, and then you don't know if you just bumped your scope off, and your rings can get twisted when it's not in a scabbard, and it's still fully accessible while you're standing up, right?
Mhm.
So just reach back and pull the rifle out. Like there's a ton of advantages to it. It's just really convenient. I'll throw my rifle in there, I'll throw the pack in the back of my truck, and as soon as I get out, I'm just grabbing my pack, putting it on,
Yeah.
and I'm ready to go. So
Yeah, I love that aspect of it, just leaving my rifle instead of having to take it out and put it into a case, it's just in my backpack. I also love, like, if you're not running a sling on your gun, like, having to lean your gun up against a bush or something.
yeah,
Not a sling, a bipod. You have to lean your gun up against a bush or something, like, you can just keep it in your pack. There's always some you always know where your rifle is, it's in your pack right there. And then I don't know what, like, you guys just nailed the design, like, it just I know this is supposed to be Switzerland on this podcast. I just love this piece of gear. So just yeah, I mean, I think if you're not running their pack, you should run this on your pack. I know a lot of people who do that. So like you can buy this scabbard and adapt it, but it just slides in really good. Like the material inside isn't like rough. It's like I don't even know what it is, like a Dyneema or something, or like it's a nylon, and the gun slides in there, but it's like tight still. Like it's just like a glove. And I just that's a great. He knocked it out of the park with that thing. I really enjoy it.
yeah, no, we're really proud of it. Like I said, I mean, it's one of the defining characteristics of our brand, and that patent goes way back because it's Glenn's was Glenn's original idea, and we've made slight adjustments to it. A couple years ago, we added maybe half an inch, I think, on each side of the scabbard to account for larger optics and bipods and just trying to stay current with the gear that's on the market. But we haven't really had to do much to it. It's a really simple piece of gear, to be completely honest, but the value you get out of it is huge.
And my rifle does slide in with a bipod on it. So with a Harris
Yeah.
bipod, it'll slide in. I kinda like Harris. I don't know. I tried a bunch of fancy ones, and the Harris is just kinda where my at. It slides right in there and works. So, you talked about coming out of the military and having an elk fall over. There's nothing worse than carrying an elk, period, but, nothing worse than, like, carrying a load and having it shift on you and not be, like, secured. There's no real good way to carry an elk, but there's better ways. Tell me about
Sure.
that. So you weren't using an stock, I take it, because I know the feeling when you have 100 pounds on your back and it shifts and your whole body just gets like flung off a cliff, or into a bush and you're falling down. And I know the feeling. So tell me about that. How'd this all happen?
Yeah.
How'd you end up at stock?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and honestly, it's a story that I'm really proud of because I think it's a very authentic story and very in line with our brand. And that, I was a infantryman in the army, joined out of high school, or more or less, I did one semester of college and then joined the military. Did a combat deployment to Afghanistan that time, and got out at a fairly young age still, and was ready to move on with my life. The war was winding down, and I felt like I had kind of done my time and done my service. And so I got out. I ended up in Boise, Idaho. I went to Boise State and finished a two undergraduate degrees, and then was enrolled in the MBA program at Boise State. I was really just looking for an internship between my undergrad and my grad degree. And so I reached out to Eberlestock via the customer service email and was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I need a summer internship before I start my MBA. and I'm willing to do an unpaid internship. I don't need to be paid. I just need some business experience. So I came in, Glenn personally emailed me back, and I recognized the name and was like, oh wow, I'm talking to the owner. I had no idea how big the company was. And
But you had
uh,
have you seen their packs at this time? Did you know about them from being in the military or
yeah,
no?
yeah. So that's yeah. It's a really important part of this, I guess. So I like I said, so I was an infantryman. I got assigned to our battalion recon platoon, and so we had a 7-man sniper section in that platoon. And so all of our snipers were carrying our gunslinger pack because it allowed them to carry M110 on their back with an M4 carbine in their hands. And so as we move into OP or a shooting position, they carry an M4 so that if there was close contact, you want that semi-automatic rifle with an ACOG on it to engage at close distance. And once we would get into our sniper position, we would transition from our M4 to our M110, right? And so I knew of Eberlestock through that, and I was familiar with the scabbard. I was familiar with the value of that the scabbard offers, and then it's kind of a cool story actually. I was actually out bear hunting with a guy Hunter, who I think you know. So Hunter and I were friends before either of us worked here. Hunter's now one of our sales guys, and I'll never forget it. We were hiking in to go bear hunting, and I was wearing a different pack that I won't name, and I liked it, but I wasn't totally happy with it. And he was like, "Hey, you should check out Eberlestock." And in my mind, I was like, "Eberlestock makes military packs." That was how I knew Eberlestock. And he goes, "No, they don't. They make hunting packs." And Hunter knew of them from the hunting side. I knew of them from the military side. And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, they're right here in Boise." And so I ended up going and obviously checking us out, them at the time, now us, checking them out, and that's how I, a realized that we were in the hunting space, and b realized that we were here in Boise, and that was just something, when I reached out to work here, to intern here, hunting became. I didn't grow up hunting, admittedly, but hunting became such a part of my life in that it offered this real seamless transition from the military, especially being in a reconnaissance platoon. Our job was to move into a position undetected, quiet, and then basically sit and observe, and engage targets if necessary. And I understood that job really well, and I didn't really know hunting as far as experience goes, but I understood it in a way that I was like, hey, this translates, and this translates really, really well. Like, put on a backpack, carry a rifle, go identify and engage targets. I can do that.
Mhm.
And so that's really how that all started. And then, like I said, it's a really personal story to me now, obviously, in that it's a story about me, but it's personal in the sense of like the fact that Hunter now works here with me. And again, he knew of us from the hunting side, and I knew of us from the military side. And that's something that we encounter often with our customers now, as people that are like, "Oh, I didn't realize you guys did military stuff. I didn't realize you guys did
Mhm.
hunting stuff." That we do a lot of different things. And so I honestly, I apologize. I don't even remember what the original question
You
was
were
there
going
because
you
it's
so now
been.
you call so now he's called you, Glenn's called you and said,
Oh, sorry.
"Summer internship."
Yeah. Yeah. So summer internship, right? So Glenn, it's important to me to say this. Glenn was very clear. He's like, look, we don't work for free here. So you're not doing an unpaid internship. We're going to pay you, and we're not sure what you're going to do, but we've got a spot for you. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, it turns out I was the sixth employee at the time. I thought we were this big company in the space, and we had a really substantial brand, but we were a small company. We're
What year
now.
is this?
This would have been 2019. So I've been
Okay.
with the company for about 5 years now, but I was the sixth employee, and honestly, everyone kind of did a little bit of everything. In those days, it was like, guys, if we need to go pack boxes, we pack boxes. If we need to answer customer service calls, we answer customer service calls. So I show up on my first day, and I'm like, all right, what am I doing? And they're like, you're going to work in shipping. And I was like, huh, it's not really the experience that I'm looking for from my MBA, but you're paying me, so this is good. And so I'll kind of hang around for a while and see what happens. And I'm glad that I did, because within about 2 weeks, one of the guys quit. We shuffled some pieces around. They asked me to manage our retail store that's here at our headquarters location in Boise. And I was like, all right, cool. That's something, and it's progress, and I love it. And at this point, I was just bought into the brand. I was around for literally 2 weeks, and between the guys and the gear and just feeling that sense of camaraderie, I was like, man, I want to be a part of this. So I take over the retail store a week or two after that. They're like, hey, if you want full time after the summer, we'd love to have you. So they had already offered me a full time position. I had some things going on in my personal life that just made it an easy decision to stay. And so I ended up not doing the MBA and committed to staying here full time. About 9 months after that, so a little less than a year, the former head of marketing ended up leaving. And by that time, I guess I had proven that I was at least decently intelligent. And so Glenn came to me and said, hey, do you want to take over marketing and give it a shot? He said, if you're not good at it, we'll find something else for you to do. But I think you can do this. I think you can do it well. And I was really hesitant. I was like, man, I don't know if I'm qualified for that. All I really knew about marketing at the time was that a lot of it happened on social media. I wasn't even personally on social media, and I didn't want to be. I was like, I don't know. Long story short, that was basically the week that COVID lockdown started. And so I was like, hey, a full time job making more money than I'm making right now is probably not a bad thing. I'll give it a shot. So I took it. And that really started, like a pretty aggressive growth trajectory for me personally and for the brand. I stepped into the marketing role. And again, I didn't really know much about marketing, but I was pretty good at identifying things that were wrong, right? I didn't always have the answer how to make it right, but I was good at looking at it going, hey, we're not doing this well. And there was just a lot of things on the website, on social media, and all this that like we weren't really telling a story. And I had this sort of unique perspective as a fairly new dude with some background, going like, hey, like I should understand this, and I don't. So we're not telling that story very well. And so me and Casey Richmond, who's still with us today, and he's now our second most tenured employee. I'm our third most tenured employee. By the end of the year, we'll be around 40 employees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from the original six. So there's three of us that still exist that I call the OGs, and the first and foremost of those by a long shot is our COO Tanner Leeton. He's been here 12 years, and so Casey Richmond and I were really the start of the marketing department. And I say that all the time, like we really did start like a true marketing department where we took a strategic approach to marketing and growth and scaling this business. And it started working almost immediately. And that all goes back to, Glenn had an amazing product and built an amazing brand. Just didn't really have the guys that knew how to look at it strategically and really grow it. And we've had a lot of success since then. We will have about quadrupled the business in 3.5, 4 years, and have definitely gained a lot of brand exposure and a lot of market share in that process and grown financially. Obviously, our staff has grown significantly. And, I now find myself, Tanner Leeton and I together run the day to day of the business. And at the highest level. And so it's a pretty, like I said, it's a really cool story for me personally because it impacted me. But starting quite literally at the lowest level or the most entry level, and just getting in and saying like, hey, I'm just here to work, and I just want to be a part of this thing and impact it positively. To now find myself in the position I'm in is really near and dear to me for obvious reasons.
That's awesome, man. And if anyone's listening to this and you're like, I thought this was a pack podcast, it is. And the cool thing about the hunting industry and these brands like Eberlestock and some of the guys that are coming on here or Tricer is that story. And you feel a connection to Eberlestock. When you tell that story, I feel a connection to like Glenn and what he's done and what you've done. You going through the military. Like I appreciate the brand so much more now hearing that. It's just neat to hear. And I think that does sell for you guys too, is that story and like where you guys came from, that origin story. You're not just it wasn't just some like, venture capitalist that came in and bought a backpack company and started selling backpacks. It was somebody out of necessity started building things and grew this thing into what it is today. And that's just super impressive. That's the American dream right there. And to go as big as you are and build the stuff you guys are building is awesome. And we could go probably 10 hours on all the packs you guys make. You guys make a ton of different packs. I have a few different ones, but what I want to focus on for the sake of my audience and like kind of the niche would be your, I guess what I would call your flagship hunting pack now, which would be like your F1 mainframe and like your vapor packs. and the modularity of that. So let's kind of get into that and where it came from and kind of go down that. And let's go from there. Yeah. F1 mainframe. Let's talk about that series.
Yeah, so the mainframe is really the foundation of what we call the EMOD system, the Eberlestock modular system. So, the mainframe serves as the base, and then there's a whole suite of accessories, if you will, that either zip and or buckle to the mainframe. We've actually got a bunch of updates coming to some of the sort of historic EMOD accessories this year, so I'll
New
talk
bat
about them.
wings.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll
Saw
talk
that.
about some of those at a high level. The bat wings are getting updated. We've actually got a new size of the bat wing coming this year. Our dry bag that we've had for a long time got some updates so that it will now buckle to the frame. The duffel bag will now buckle to the frame. Will buckle to the frame. The Vapor's 2 years old, I believe, at this point. We got another pack in the works, so there's a lot going on around the EMOD system as a whole. But yeah,
As a foundation, your frame of all the packs, you look at it and it's like a frame. Like I look at your frame and I'm like, it looks like a workhorse, right? It's not. I wouldn't call it an internal frame, right? It'd be an external frame. Is that what you call that?
it's
Kind of, sort of.
kind of a
Sounds
hybrid.
like a
Yeah,
hybrid, but it actually has a shelf on the bottom as well, which at first I was like, I don't know. And now I'm like, I absolutely love because you can stand the thing up and it holds itself up when you're packing it. And like it's not falling over on you. Your meat's not sliding off your pack. Like it's like an actual shelf on there. That's the foundation. Let's start with that. Let's start with the frame.
yeah. So you brought up some good points there. That the sort of traditional perception of a pack frame is that it's something that you go back to the truck and you grab and you only use it when you got
Mhm.
to haul meat. Again, Glenn has this spirit of just making things better in the sense that, like, for whatever reason, the early pack frames that were on the market really weren't built for like comfort. They weren't built to wear
Yeah.
all day. They had really basic straps, really basic padding, and there was just no reason that needed to be the case, right? And so Glenn really took sort of a backpack design and put a frame, a literal aluminum frame into it or onto it, and that's why I call it a hybrid. Is it's it's internal and that the frame itself is sewn, or I should say is strapped and buckled into a fabric sleeve, so it's kind of somewhere between an external and an internal frame. But wanted to take the function and the hauling capability of sort of the traditional pack frame, but
Mhm.
just make it better and make it more comfortable and something that you could wear all day every day that was going to feel like a very comfortable backpack. And I don't want to say it wasn't hard to accomplish because I don't want to take anything away from Glenn's thought and theory there, but my point is, like, there was nothing stopping that from happening. Nobody had done it. And so it really is, the mainframe is, in my opinion, I'm obviously biased, but in my opinion, the most capable frame on the market. We can talk about some of the loads and weight tests that we've done to sort of prove that, but it is as comfortable, and in some cases, I would argue more comfortable than a traditional backpack is. And that, like, the padding that's on there, we've got kind of this V channel padding that sits on your lower back, and that's intentional. Everything is intentional and everything is thought out. It allows ventilation so that you're going to sweat when you're hauling on an elk or whatever. It's
Mhm.
just part of it, but it allows air to ventilate through there. The shoulder harness is adjustable so you can fit it to your torso. We've got a pretty substantial lumbar pad that allows it to sit kind of at the top of your butt so that it doesn't slide down on you. We use pretty aggressive mesh that's sort of notorious for
Mhm.
grabbing and holding onto your clothing, and so it's really well thought out. It's got your load lifters and your hip belt and the ability to add pouches to the hip belt. So there's nothing about it that's limiting in the way that some of the older, more traditional pack frames are. We just took the what I would call the pros of the pack frame, added some of the pros of a traditional backpack, and then tried to reduce or at least limit the cons to a frame. And I really, again, I'm biased, admittedly, but I don't know that there's a con to it. I don't know that you wear that and feel like it's any different from whatever you consider a comfortable backpack.
Yeah, and from by all intents and purposes of pretty much every backpack company out there, they are a backpack, and the main frame is a pack frame that you could also you make it a backpack. You could add things to it, which is one thing I love about it is, like, you could take your like, we've had times where we packed out elk on my kids last year, where we just threw his pack off back in the truck. The first pack, we had the pack on there. Second trip in, it was just a bottle of water and the pack frame.
Yep.
And so you've got this thing, I don't know what that weighs, 4 pounds?
Yeah, right around there.
It weighs nothing, and there's no pack on there. You're not having to worry about strapping the bag to it or anything, your rifle. It's just a load hauler. So you don't have to have, like, traditionally, you'd have a backpack and then you'd have a load hauling frame, and now everything's kinda gone to this, like, internal frame backpack that does both, which is great. I run them as well. But now what you guys have is, like, almost the best of both worlds where you can kinda just run what you got or whatever you need for the experience, for whatever you're experiencing or having to do, right? Like, you could run,
Hmm.
like, one backpack, you could run, like, just the bat wings on to go shed hunting, right? A couple bottles of water or a bladder, just your bat wings. You can have everything in there you need. But then at the same time, you can go and put on, like, one of your vapor packs, which you offer in 3 sizes, 4 sizes?
Two
2
sizes
2
now.
sizes.
It was originally three. We
It
kind
was
of
3.
updated that line. It's now two. Yep.
Okay, 2 sizes. And then on that, I guess we should go into that now. So we've got what is the before we move on,
Yep.
what is the weight capacity of that frame? 'Cause I have to imagine you guys put 1,000,000 pounds in that thing. What's the weight capacity of
Yes.
that frame?
So first of all, there's a YouTube video if you search it to back this up. But we tested it up to, I think it was 1380, 1,380 pounds. It never did break. We ran out of weight. I think that's the pack we ended up throwing pallets and sandbags and all kinds of other stuff on. We welded up basically a replica human torso out of steel to hold the pack and then the weight. And we cut these big quarter or three, I think 3/4 inch steel plates and just started clipping them, stacking them, whatever we could do to get the weight on them, and 1,300 pounds plus. And we've got a handful of packs actually that made it to 1,300 pounds and never broke. But the mainframe, we literally ran out of weight with 1,300 pounds on it.
So it can hold some weight. Alright,
Yeah,
so now with the
yeah, a little
main
bit.
frame is covered, now let's go into the, E-mod system.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things that's bittersweet about modularity, we were talking about this before the pod. One of the things that's bittersweet about modularity is it gives you a lot of options, and you got to explain those options. You got to understand those options. But once you do, and it doesn't take a long time to understand it, you go, oh my gosh, I can build whatever I want out of this. So the sort of core or staple sort of go-to system is the mainframe with a vapor. If you're rifle hunting, definitely add the scabbard to it.
Mhm.
And what's unique for us is we use zippers and buckles. And you can take a mainframe and a vapor, and you can put that vapor on it in about 10 seconds, if not
Mhm.
quicker. So that's kind of the standard. We have a lid that goes with it. There's a bunch of accessories that you can add to, but then bat wings are another really common accessory to go with it, right? So you have your mainframe, and you take two bat wings, same thing. You can put them on in about 10 seconds. If you're changing from the vapor to the bat wing, it takes maybe 15 seconds or whatever. Like, I mean, it's so fast to change in between those. What's cool too, though, is like if you buy the mainframe and the bat wings and the vapor, you can run the mainframe with the vapor on it. That's one configuration. You can run the mainframe by itself. That's another configuration. You can run the mainframe with the bat wings. That's another configuration. Or you could run the mainframe with the vapor on there, and then you can add the bat wings into that same system using either the zippers or the strap loops that are on the back of the bat wings. And again, this is where it gets sort of, it's simple, but it's complicated to explain.
One cool
And that's
thing
a whole,
is
that's a whole fourth convert.
with that, if you run the bat wings with the vapor, it almost leaves like a 6-inch square cube behind the pack and the frame, and then you can go and put your food in or a tent in or something, and it's not in your pack. So, like, you really even though the vapor is like 4,500, how big's the vapor? The bigger
So
one,
there's a 5,000 without the lid.
5,000 on the lid. So even though it's 5,000, you actually put another in that space behind there, probably another 3,000 right there just behind it. That's
Yep.
pretty slick. And then you can get to camp, take that vapor off and run just your bat wings, and you're not having to bring around this big old backpack. You know what I mean? Like if you
Yep.
pack in an 8,000 liter backpack for a week long hunt, you're stuck with an 8,000 liter backpack for a week long hunt. Like even though your tent, everything's there, your food. I mean, like I don't know many guys. I mean, unless you're spike camping, you're pretty much put everything in your tent and then going out. So it
Yeah.
depends on the hunt, but it's kind of neat. It's kind
Yeah.
of neat system.
One of my favorite configurations is to do the vapor with the bat wings in the mainframe. And basically, what I'll do is if I'm spike camping, is I'll put all of camp, so tent, food, extra clothing, all that stuff. That all goes into the vapor, and then the sort of hunting essentials, which would be obviously your tripod, your kill kit, any knife, all the essentials, right? Go into your bat wings. So you can go in, like, especially if you're doing an afternoon hunt, like if you're for whatever reason you're taking off after work or whatever, and you're getting in there and you've got a couple hours before the sun goes down, you find where you're going to camp, you mark it on your GPS, you unzip the main or the you unzip the vapor from the mainframe, you drop it and you leave it, you zip the bat wings on. That whole process again took less than 30 seconds to do, and you're gone. Like
Mhm.
bat wings are packed, and you just downgraded so that you've got a smaller profile. So if you're hunting in September when you still have some pretty thick brush, like you're not necessarily super wide and
Mhm.
full pack on your back, you're dropping weight, and you just don't have this big pack for what it ultimately ends up being like a 2 or 3 hour hunt out of a spike camp. And then when it's time to get out of there, you just zip everything back on and you can take everything back to the truck all in one load. Like there's so many combinations or configurations that you can do with the mainframe. You're talking about that space that the vapor can leave between the frame and the vapor. Like you said, like there's a few thousand cubic inches of space that isn't actually made of anything, right? There's no added weight to
Mhm.
that. And so, I mentioned earlier, we like to say that we offer complete gear systems. So one of the things that we offer is ultralight dry bags.
Mhm.
So I'll take a 20 or a 35-liter dry bag, put that on my frame, put the vapor over that. That weighs 3 ounces, 4 ounces, something like that. And I just got another 20 or 35 liters that's now just compressed between the pack and the frame. That can be food and clothing and whatever else. And so it really gives you a lot of options to pack in and out however you need to without adding a ton of weight and carry the equivalent of 8,000 or so cubic inches in a way that you can downgrade to what would be a day pack at 1,200 cubic
Yeah.
inches if you downgrade to just the bat wings.
Yeah, it's a really, really slick system. And honestly, until I used it, I was kind of like, oh, there's too much going on there. It's kind of, and then like I used it and I'm like, wow, this is a really cool system and it's really simple. Like at first I'm like, maybe this isn't that simple. I don't know. I just want a simple thing. And then like I started using it and it's like, wow, this is really simple. And I'm kind of falling in love with it. So I mean, full disclosure, I'm going to run one this year because what I ran into with, I ran the same pack for a long time. And I think that pack is incredible. Like when I say long time, I think I have like their second version of their pack and they're on like the fourth or fifth now. I think I've ran it for like 7 or 8 years now. But what I ran into is like having to carry around these stupid cameras now and my BTX. A 4,000 liter bag isn't big enough even for some of my day trips. So with your guys' stuff, I can be kind of more modular and like still use a 4,000. I shouldn't say 4,000 cubic inch. I keep saying liters. It's not liters, guys.
Yeah.
So 4,000 cubic inch. I can still, strap the BTX behind the pack frame, behind the pack and run it. It's just real simple to do. I'm not having to go and a lot of these other packs, it's kind of a process to get access to that load shelf. And with yours, it's not that much of a process to do that. And I really appreciate that about it. So I'm gonna run the snot out of it this year. My plan is to hunt. I don't know, I think my goal is 2 weeks a month. So I'm gonna put it through the paces and see if I can't break it. Let's talk about storage. So I'm a very like I like simple. I don't like a bunch of pockets. You don't have a lot of pockets. What does packing one of your packs look like? Why are there no like there's some pack companies who are very minimal. even though I talked about this whole system you have, your pack, the Vapor is a very minimal pack. For all intents and purposes, it's a bag with
Yep.
some zippers on the outside and a couple pockets on the sides of it and straps to tripod on. What does it look like for packing that thing? There's not a bunch of there's not a bunch of pockets everywhere. How do you pack?
Yeah.
How you run that thing?
So this offers another good opportunity for a cool story that's near and dear to my heart. So before I was even head of marketing, before I was our marketing director, which was well before I was the chief marketing officer. This is when I would have been running the store. Just interacting with customers and stuff. I got that feedback a lot, and I personally wanted a really simple pack. I'm the same way. I don't want a lot of pockets. Like I was trained in the military how to set up my gear and learn my gear system and know how to operate out of
Because
it.
your
So like, I
packs
don't need all that.
weren't this way before.
Correct.
Like your
Yeah.
packs were not like they were. You could lose a knife in your pack very easily because there's 20 places to put it.
Yeah, exactly. So that was sort of at the time at the time that's what was sort of the market demand was a lot of organization, a lot of pockets and stuff.
Mhm.
And so long story short, I had one of our earliest EMOD packs, which was called our little big top. And it was very similar to the Vapor, but to talk about how different or how much it's evolved, the little big top had its own hip belt and shoulder harness so that when you put it onto the frame, you could take it off and wear it as its own bag, which sounds great, but there was all this extra padding. There was two, you're carrying two hip belts and two shoulder harnesses. And like,
Mhm.
I was like, man, this is a lot. So long story short, I personally took a seam ripper and scissors and cut everything you could imagine off that thing. Just cut everything off of it. And I cut the weight by like 75%. And I remember walking into Glenn's office. At the time, Glenn was still very involved in the business. And I went to, he was our only designer at the time. And we now have three, not including Glenn. And so I go to Glenn and I go, hey, look, like this is what I want, and I think we'd sell a hell of a lot of these. And our staff had approached him before, people had approached him before, and told him, you should do this, you should do that. But I'm sure you're used to that as a founder. It's like everyone's always got the next amazing
Dude,
idea.
every day. I appreciate it, by the way. Give me your ideas. I appreciate it.
Sure,
I
me
appreciate it.
too, me too.
But
But
I
it
get
is
it all the time. It's like, you should
big.
do this. And I'm like, oh my dude, I can't even think straight. But yes.
Exactly. So I came to him and I was like, hey, look, this is what we would do. This is how we would do it. Here's the ROI from it. Kind of brought him what I would call a complete idea rather than just you should do this, creating a bunch more work for him. It was like, here's what we'll do. Here's how we'll do it. Here's how we'll market it, all this stuff. And he was like, all right, go for it. Like if you want to do it, I think if anything, he was kind of like, just,
Get out of my office.
yeah, like he was like, just go for it, kid. Like have fun. And so I went to a guy that we had just hired at the time, Nate Tong, who's now our senior designer, and he's absolutely amazing at what he does. But he was a real junior dude at the time, and I was like, "Can we make this?" And he was like, "Yeah, got it." Took it, and and that's where the inspiration from the Vapor came from. Was it was actually taking an old pack, and I was just like, "Hey, like let's cut everything off of it and just make it as simple as possible." And then from there, it was like, okay, great. Well, now we have this, but now you just have a bunch of stuff floating around in a bag, right? Well, we didn't have ultralight dry bags. And so I don't necessarily want to take credit for it. I could be wrong, but I think I brought that idea to the table too. I could be wrong. And if one of the guys in this company hears this and thinks I'm wrong, I apologize if it was your idea. But it was like, hey, why aren't we doing ultralight dry bags? Like super simple, right? Like just super lightweight for organization. And so
Mhm.
once we started adding, again, I go back to like complete gear system. Once we started adding at least the offer for like, here's some organizational tools that you can add that are lighter weight than a bunch of pockets and zippers and all that. And if you don't want to use those and you just want to throw stuff in a bag, like that's totally cool too. Then we had this sort of complete gear system that solved all of the potential problems. And that goes into, I told you before the pod, like I'm a business guy more than I am a gear guy. So I was really into the idea of like, how do we offer more, products and offer a complete system that tells a story. But that's a whole different podcast.
You also went to, like, you used to be running like the thicker, I don't want, not canvas, I don't know what the material would be. Your packs were like thicker
Yep.
and like a material. And now you guys are, I mean, they're all material, but now it's like almost like this like ultra light, almost kind of reminds me of like you're like your modern day hunting pants, like that material, like stretchy. It conforms, like it's a very easy loading pack. And then what you could run with it is like bags, right? So like what I found with pockets is you just end up using them and forgetting where everything is. What I'd like to do is have like, I honestly would probably only run like one or two bags and then everything else just in there. Like my whole kill kit is in one bag and that's it, right? It's not in like six different pockets. It's right here. So I pull that out when I kill an animal. I pull it out. I open it up. Everything's in there. Another one is going to be like all my camp stuff, right? I actually run like what's it called? Some REI type pack that I just loved, ran forever. Outdoor research bag, and that's going to be like my tags, my lighters, my extra batteries. Everything is going to be in there. Zip ties, and that's in the pack. Other than that, you really don't need a ton of pockets. At least I don't. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's you don't need so by getting rid of all those pockets and zippers, you really do cut back a lot on the weight. And honestly, even though it looks simple, I feel like it's more organized because everything's kind of has a place,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like I'm big on like I've run a manufacturing company for almost 25 years now, and what I find is like when you put shelves in there, people put stuff on them,
Yeah.
and like, or if you put a table in there, it gets covered in crap. Like
Yeah.
don't like you almost don't want those more than you need. I like to be able to add what I need, right? So if I was going to
Absolutely.
load your pack, I would go like the bottom of the pack would be like my sleeping pad, then my sleeping bag, and then I would shove in like my food or some jackets. It just kind of all fills up and it fills that space rather than like trying. I don't use I don't know if you do or not. I don't use bags for my stuff. I kind of shove it in. Even my tent, I'll take my tent out and put my tent in there as well to shove it
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it just like, especially with the stretchy bag like that, you can just really just fill that thing up. And it's
Yeah.
nice. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that about your pack. So.
Yeah, you commented on it. It's like, our sort of bread butter has always been durability. Like
Mhm.
super durable. It'll last you forever. No one's ever really tried to debate that. I mean, it'll last you forever. But again, just kind of modernizing a little bit, we started to realize like you don't have to use just the most, heavyweight, ultra durable fabric in every single spot. And so again, we try to find that right compromise for, hey, there are spots that we can use different fabrics, not even necessarily that they're less durable. They're just more appropriate for that spot. So like you're talking about some of the stretch fabric that we use on some of the external pockets. If it's not in a place that's going to take a lot of wear and tear, then we can transition from like a heavy like 500 denier nylon to a lighter, stretchy, so it's now lighter, like physically lighter, but it's also just better in the sense that it allows it to stretch. If it's on the face of the pack, where when the pack is full, that pocket is now like kind of flattened out. If it
Mhm.
doesn't stretch, you can't really use it that much, right? It
Yeah.
just flattens it out. And so, like some of our diaphragms, like the top of the pack that'll have the cinch cord in it, call that a diaphragm. Like that's an ultralight nylon rather than a heavyweight because it's under a lid. Like it's never going to really take a lot of wear and tear. It doesn't need to be a 500 denier. It can be an ultra lightweight. And so we lose some weight there, but it's also just easier to access. It's a little bit more malleable and like there's purpose behind our design in all of the materials we choose and where we put them. And going back to you asked a question about like how to organize a pack. Again, I'm like you. Like I'm going to take my tent out of its own little stuff sack, mostly because I don't need it and I don't really want to mess with it. When I'm packing up in the morning, the last thing I want to do is sit there and try and
Mhm.
feed this tent into this. Like
Mhm.
it's going to go in. It's going to go in. I'm gonna pack it in and around everything that's in there. It's gonna pack better that way. There's no wasted space. I'm dropping some weight. It's one less thing to worry about. You can always add organization too, as long as you offer that, or as long as people have access to that, right? And that's where I go back to our ultralight dry bags. We have a product called the hanger pouch. We have that option there. But if you sew in a bunch of pockets, you add a bunch of weight that now people either have to compromise the durability or the structural integrity of their pack by cutting it out themselves, which is honestly just annoying. The last thing you want to do is spend a couple $100s on something and immediately modify it in a way that's, structurally not you, you don't want to make modifications to it, right? Like it's easier to add to than it is to cut out. That's the last thing that we want to see people doing is having to get it home and now I got to become a seamstress to make this what I want. We're just going to give you a basic lightweight offering, and then it's really easy to add to later.
Yeah, and I can say too, I do like having the ability to take out those bags and use them, right? So if I have my kill kit and then I can take that kill kit out, and I'm not like it's not like I'm gonna dig into my pack every time to get that out of there.
Sure.
It's the pack's like typically the pack's, 15 feet away, and I'm over there doing the animal, right? And I've got the kill kit next to me and I'm doing everything up because like I don't want to pack in my way when I'm doing stuff. Like my rifle, everything's kind of off to the side. I bring the kill kit over there, I do it, get to my tent, I pull out my whatever my toiletries kit. Like I said, it has everything in there, like it has my tags, everything in there. I pull that out, I know my knife's in there. I know that my spork is in there. Tricer titanium sporks, by the way. Get a Tricer spork, $9.99 on our website. So go get one. So I'm so off topic, dude. Why'd I say that? Anyways, I like the ability to be able to take it out and not have like if all your stuff is in your pack and you're in a tent, like the last thing I want to do is drag a backpack into my tent with me to go find my toothbrush.
Yeah.
I want to go like grab that bag out and have it. So like that's just my experience from spending. I mean, I by no means am I like Ryan Lampers or Brad Hunt, but I spend a lot of time in a tent every year, and that's just like how I like to camp is like have my backpack out in the vestibule and bring that in, right? And not in
Yeah.
my not sleeping with me.
Well, like you said, right? Like it's just how it's how you like to do it. And so
Mhm.
like you're talking about building kits, right? Like, hey, this is my clothing kit, or this is my food kit, or like I like to call it my camp kit. Like, usually food, water, and the extra clothing are all going in the same place because I'm planning for the next day. That's probably like I'm back at camp. If I'm accessing clothing, it's because I know tomorrow's snowing or I know tomorrow's raining or whatever. And so that's the same time that I'm be accessing my food. And so that's maybe my camp kit. And then I've got my kill kit. I've got my toiletries kit. I've got my sort of accessories kit that's like extra batteries and an extra headlamp. I'm a two headlamp guy, just little things like that. And then again, we talked about this either before or during the pod. I can't even remember now, but it's all about just like time with your gear. You learn like, hey, look, this is what works
Mhm.
for me. And again, that's sort of like what I brought to hunting for myself, brought to hunting from my time in the military was, look, there's ways to do it and there's suggestions of how to do it, but at the end of the day, you got to spend time in your gear and find out what works for you. There were a lot of things that I did in the military with my gear, things that I cut, things that I altered, things that I changed, moved around. I've got pictures from when I was in Afghanistan that you put three different pictures side by side, and I'm wearing my mag pouches completely different in all three of those pictures because as the mission would change, I would adapt my gear to it. But the better I know my gear, the
Mhm.
more I can consider the factors that are either going to change or stay consistent, and then adjust my gear accordingly the next day, the next week, the next season. If you're transitioning from elk to mule deer, like the more time that you spend in that gear in different scenarios, the better you can plan ahead and go, hey, look, this is just how I need to set this up. And the more versatility or the more options that you have and how you set it up, the better. Because really, we make gear for people who do everything, right? Like I think we're the epitome of like our guys are out duck hunting in January, archery elk hunting in September, mule deer rifle hunting in October. We got a dude who already shot a spring bear last night in April. Like our guys are doing everything, and with that modular system and with versatile gear, they can do whatever they need to with that gear as long as they're knowledgeable enough in their gear to adapt as necessary based on whatever they're doing that particular day or week.
Yeah. One thing I'll say before I get into your hunt, I want a hunting story from you. One thing I'll say about I like what you said about like it's easier to add than take away. And I think like especially for new people getting into hunting or getting into any sport, you get so excited that you buy all the bells and whistles.
Sure.
And then once you do it for a while, you realize like, wow, I don't need half of this stuff.
Yeah.
I swear, like, I mean, I've used the same sleeping pad for 8 years. You know what I mean? Like you can always add stuff to it. So I would say like if I were to go like an Eberlestock, I would start out with just the mainframe and the vapor,
Yep. I would
right?
too.
And I would go run it, right? And I would probably say, I mean, the 2000 is awesome, but I think that 5000 is kind of like a really you could fold it down really nice. It kind of like if you needed one pack, that would be the one I would buy because you can do everything with it. If
Yep.
you're only going to be hunting out of the car, get the 2000. If you're only going to be day hunting, I would get the smaller one all day long. Start with that. and then say like, oh, you know what? It'd be nice if I had a hip pouch, right? Or I had something else. Like one thing I do want from you guys is your Nalgene thing. I'm on the list of like, tell me when it's in stock. I want the Nalgene holder because like I have the hardest time with like keeping a Nalgene next to me. So like
Yep.
I want to try that thing out. But like, you know what I mean? Don't go buy everything. Start with something and then kind of add to it, right? Like you just, we get so caught up in all the bells and whistles and we kind of, sometimes you overdo it. I mean, the
Yeah.
same thing goes for rifles, it goes for optics, it goes for everything. Just start with something basic and then you can add to that. And that's the cool thing about your system is like you can get the 5,000 and just the frame, and then you can start adding on the bat wings or some of the pouches and the rifle scabbard, which I think you should buy no matter what. So add that in there. So get the main frame, the vapor, and the rifle scabbard. You start adding that stuff into it as you need it, and you kind of develop a system that way rather than buying everything and having to like. Sometimes you buy everything, you feel like you have to use everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you feel like I have to use all these bags now. I got all these bags. You know.
It's like you said with the pockets. I hear that from guys all the time. They're like, "Well, I need to buy a smaller pack because if I buy a bigger pack, I'll fill it." Like there's something just kind of like inherently
Mhm.
like there's something inherent about in human nature of like, well, like if the shelf is there, I'm going to fill it. If the drawer is there, I'm going to fill it. Same thing with a pack. It's like if it's there, I'm going to fill it. If I have the accessory, I want to use it. And yeah, like look, I'd love to sit here and tell you you need every single piece of the UMod system. But that's not the point of it. Like we're not trying to just sell you gear to sell you gear. It's like no, there's a purpose to every single thing. Start with what you do. Most guys, let's be honest, most guys fill their total time of hunting, they fill probably 80% of it with one or two things: elk and mule deer or bear or whatever. And then the rest of that time is, what do I have time for? What tags did I not draw? Then now I've got some
Mhm.
time to go out and chase turkeys, and maybe I don't do that every whatever. That time, well, you'll be able to adapt your pack to that, but build your pack and your system around what you're going to do 80% of the time. Learn your gear really, really well at the thing that you care about the most, and then just add the fairly inexpensive accessories as necessary to adapt to that other 20% of the time if you feel like it's important enough that you want to do that. But you don't need every single piece of that system. I agree with you 100%. I'm a 5,000 guy, whether I'm day hunting or not, because it's not a lot heavier than 2,500. And so having that space is nice if you can commit to one. But whether it's the Vapor 2,500 or the Vapor 5,000 with the mainframe, and if you're rifle hunting, absolutely buy the scabbard. And that's what you need to get started. You can always go add stuff from there.
What's that
Um,
going to cost to get the mainframe, the Vapor 45 or 5,000, and the scabbard?
so you're right around, if you're doing the 5,000 scabbard and mainframe, you would be right around $600, I think. I should be able to give you an exact answer on that as the chief marketing officer, but it's I think you're right at about 600 bucks.
Which is right in there with every other company, actually probably a little bit better than other companies. And you have the option to just really just blow the thing up with a bunch of modular accessories, which is really neat. So you're not pigeonholing yourself into one pack. It's many packs in one, which I love about it.
Yeah, you're not buying another $300 or $400 day pack later. You're buying $100 set of bat wings. You get two bat wings for $100, and now you have a whole nother. You actually, by doing that, you give yourself two other pack options. You now have bat wings with the mainframe, or you have bat wings with the mainframe and the vapor. So for another $100, you get two more pack
Yep.
configuration options rather than going out and buying two or three different packs because this is my week
Yep.
long archery elk, and then this is my mule deer day hunting.
That was really good, dude. So we like to end every podcast with a hunting story. So I hope you got a hunting story. It doesn't need to be your biggest animal. Doesn't have to be the most crazy story. Just you give us your favorite hunting story. It could be funny. It could be tragic. It could be whatever it is. Give us a hunting story. Shoot, man.
Sure. I got two that come to mind that came off both were elk coming off the same mountain. But I'm gonna pick a cow elk hunt. Not the coolest story.
Dude, second guy in a row to pick a cow elk hunt. That's good.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna pick a cow elk hunt. It was my brother's first ever elk hunt, and we hunted for 4 days before this. In that time, I ended up shooting a buck, and I packed that entire buck on my back the entire day.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, because we weren't okay. So part of the story that's going to come up anyway. My brother's a very capable dude. He's what I call a capable dude. He's athletic. He's smart. He's one of those guys that in a bad situation you're happy to have there. But he's not a mountain hunter. Let's just be honest. And guys know like you can be in great shape. Mountain hunting is just different. The way that
Mhm.
it hits your hips and your back and like you just break down. And so this was on like day 2 or 3, I think, that I shot this buck. And I knew that he was like I knew that we had to reserve whatever he had in the tank between the military and I run ultra marathons. I work out every day. I hunt in the mountains a lot. I'm not saying I'm like the biggest stud, but I was like, I'm good here. So I did. So I packed this buck around the entire day, and this was like a 3,000 feet of elevation change. Not even change, just the drop. We were about 3,000 feet up on this mountain, and it was a mess. But I was like, I'll get through it. We got one more day after this. And so last day of hunting, we get up on the same ridge and we're beat at this point. First light comes up and I see a whole herd of elk and they're like 4 miles away. I'm like, look, dude, it's the last day. If you want to go after this thing, like, let's do it. Well, he doesn't know any better, right? He's like, yeah, I want to kill an elk. Like, let's do it. So 8 o'clock in the morning, we move around this basin, just down these nasty draws, man. I would never do it again. Like knowing what I know now, I would never do it again.
Every elk
Especially,
story sounds like this.
dude, right? Like
Every
it's
elk
like
story.
it's every time you're like, why
Yeah.
did I do
Why
this?
am I doing this myself?
God, right? So just these choked out hellhole draws that we're having to go through. Long story short, we start moving at 8 o'clock in the morning. I never stopped because again, coming out of the army, dude, it's like you just go. Like you just do. You just go. And we get over there at 3:30 in the afternoon. So it's been almost 8 hours of hiking nonstop, side hilling the whole way, draws, ranges, whatever. And we get to a fairly long range. I'll just leave it kind of vague because some people probably wouldn't love to hear it if I'm being totally honest. But I had a rifle that I knew was doped really well. Again, my brother is a very capable human, and we're at a fairly long range, and and it's the closest we can get to these things without bumping them. And so I told him, I said, look, dude, the rifle can do it. If you think you can do it, the rifle can do it. There's no question. My brother's like, yeah, I think I can do it. So my brother, man, God bless him. We're laying in sagebrush and just weeds and stuff. He can't see through the scope. He ends up taking off his boots and putting one boot under each leg of the bipod. And again, the story gets worse and worse.
What caliber is he shooting?
That would have been a 7 mag at the time.
Okay, bitching. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. And so, like I said, 100% confident the rifle can do it. And squeezes off a round, drops this cow. She stands back up, drops it again. All good. Like went great. And my brother's literally like, I mean, he's emotional and he's just like, holy cow, like it was the coolest experience, right? But I know in the back of my mind, like this day just got started. It's
Yep.
now 4 o'clock, 4:30 in November. Like we got an hour of daylight, and he's like, all right, cool, it's over. And I'm like, no, listen, buddy,
Dude, you're
this
like
just
2
got
or
started.
3 a.m.
Shit,
still.
man, it got so much worse. So we get over there, we start cornering it out. She's died like basically in a bush on a side hill, like just worst case scenario. He has no idea how to quarter this thing out. I'm just having him hold the leg and this, that, and the other. I've got 2 herniated discs in my lower back. And so you know how it is. You're bending over on a side hill,
Mhm.
twisting and turning, and my
It's
back just
exhausting.
fried.
If you've never
Oh,
done an elk, it's exhausting, especially on a hill.
yeah, I mean, you're talking even with a cow, you're talking what 600 pound animal probably that you're just bending and twisting and I mean it's a mess. And
You gotta roll it. You gotta ro
yeah, exactly. You're trying to keep the dirt off of it, and at this
Yeah.
point, it's just like we'll deal with it when we get home. So we do that. By the way, we're 12 miles of hiking in at this point, and he hasn't had food all day. He hasn't had water all day. Neither have I. And I'm like, I'm looking at the sun. We finally get quartered out. I'm looking at the sun, and I'm like, hey, dude, we got to get moving here. He's like, dude, I got to eat something. Like, I'm dying. I'm like, cool. I'm gonna take a hind quarter and a shoulder, and I'm gonna shuttle it like as far as I can, and I'll come back because I knew putting half this thing on his back wasn't gonna happen. So I'm like, I'm gonna start shuttling so that you've got just a shoulder and I've got a hind, and then we'll just figure it out. But we're just gonna start getting out of here. Is that I'm going to walk for as long as I can, or as long as I feel like,
And you still have a
basically.
deer on your back, right?
No, no, no. That was the day before.
Oh, okay,
That
the
was
deer's
that was the
gone.
day before. So
Okay.
yes, I dumped that at home. We were coming back and forth every morning. And so I pack half this elk out, or not out, but a mile and a half or whatever. The nastiest, just we're down in a creek bottom, like at the bottom of this basin. No way to get out of here except for just following this creek, and it's just thick and nasty. And so I take it, and I told him it was gonna be like 45 minutes. The sun has now set. It's been like 2.5 hours. And I turn around, I could see his headlamp up on the mountain where it was when I left him. And I'm like, "What are you doing, dude? Like, grab something and start moving." Dude, I get back up there. Keep in mind, he's not a hunter. Like, so I now have empathy for this, but at the time I was pissed. I get up there, he's sitting on the ground with the rifle in his hands, and he looks at me and he goes, "Dude, I know you do this all the time, but don't ever leave me out here in the dark again." He was like not having it, dude. Like, he was not happy. Every stick, every leaf, everything was like, "What is that?" He just knows there's bears, mountain lions, and wolves, and that's enough for him. Like, he's not happy. So, anyways, we would load up the other half of that thing and start carrying that and get back to where I shuttled the meat to, and then we're picking that up. And I mean, it's now midnight or something like that. I mean, it's just awful. And we hit private property. We hit a private property line down the creek bottom, and we've got to get up about 1,000 feet up the mountain and around this thing and back down, and still have a couple miles from there. And he looks at me and he goes, "Dude, I'm done. Like, I don't know." And he felt so bad. Like, my brother, I got to defend him here, man. He's a tough dude. But if you've never done this, this is as gnarly as it gets for your first experience, right? And he's like, "Dude, I'm just done." And right before he said that, I had torn my quad. I went to go step up out of the creek bottom onto the side of the mountain to kind of get up and around a bush or something. I don't remember. And I felt my quad just go. And I was like, "Damn." And so when he said, "I'm done," I'm like, whatever, dude. He's got to be on a flight at 8 o'clock the next morning. And now I'm just legitimately pissed because I'm like, "Hey, dude." And again, looking back, it was my fault. But in my mind, I was like, "You didn't have to shoot this thing. You chose to shoot this thing, and you're committed. And now I got to deal with this thing without you." So long story short, he's like, he's done. He's not having it. And so we end up hanging this elk in a tree. I mark it on my GPS, and I'm like, "I don't know, dude. I'll figure it out tomorrow. I'm gonna call somebody with a horse or something. I'll figure it out." We get out of there, we get in the truck, and the second I get in the truck, it was like a light bulb went off. Casey Richmond. Who do I know? Casey Richmond. So Casey, our director of photography here, one of my best friends, and the gnarliest dude I know in the mountains. Like, well, the Limitless guys. They're up there. And Casey and Colton and Justin did a gnarly hunt this year that's on YouTube that'll show you they're all insane. Anyways, I text Casey and I go, "Hey, you want to make some money?" And he just writes back, "Yes." It's 2 o'clock in the morning, by the way. He just writes back, "Yes." And I was like, "All right, dude. Like, I got a cow elk that I'm gonna need you to go get. Like, this quad tomorrow. Like, after I sleep on it, I'm useless, not helping." So, anyways, to wrap this story up, I ended up paying him. He's like, "You don't have to pay me, dude. Like, I'd love to go do that." And I'm like, "I'm gonna pay you, dude, because it's gonna suck." So he leaves after work the next day. I have to tell this part of the story. I hope I'm doing okay on time.
You're
I
fine.
have,
No problem.
okay, I have to tell this part. So he leaves after work. He looks at the map, and it's like a couple miles at this point. We got it fairly close. So he's
Nothing is
thinking
a couple
like
miles in Idaho, by the way. I've hunted
nothing.
there. Nothing is a couple miles.
Yeah,
Nothing.
exactly. Elevation change, getting around this thing and that thing, and it's like he's like, "Ah, it's 3 miles, no big deal. I'll go in there and get it." So he leaves after work. He gets up there like as the sun is setting. He texts me. He's like, "Hey, I'm going in. I should be out in a little bit." I'm like, "All right, cool." I wake up at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I check my phone. I haven't heard from him. I text him, and it goes out of service. I'm like, "All right." So I wake up again at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Same thing. Haven't heard from him. Goes out of service. And Casey's got a son. Like at the time, now he's got a son and a daughter. At the time, he had a son, and I'm sitting there going like, "Man, I just sent this dude out in the woods at whatever time of night. He's out there by himself. I know he's side hilling, like, and it was gnarly. It was one of those pack outs that, like, it's probably not his worst, but it's in his top three for sure, I think. And it's one of those pack outs that, like, you slip and you fall, and like you just you don't know what happens. You're out there by yourself, and I'm like worried about it. So it's like 2:30 in the morning, and I'm like, shit. I wake up my ex-wife and I go, "Hey, look, I got to go up on the mountain. I got to go find this guy. Like, I got to make sure he's okay." So I get up there, and I come around this corner. As I come around the corner, Casey's standing there in his headlights taking a pee. It's now 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, all right, he's alive. Like, it's all good. I get out of the truck and I'm like, dude, like I was worried about you. He's like, yeah, man, I just finished. And I'm like, well, at least you got it. And I look in the bed of the truck. There's 2 quarters in the bed of the truck. And I'm like, where's the other half? He's like, dude, I got to come back tomorrow. He's like, I've been out there the whole night. It took him from 6 o'clock till 4 a.m. to get in there a couple, like I said, probably 3 miles, something like that, to get half of it. And he ended up going back the next night to get the other half because it took him that long, whatever that comes out, 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever, to do one trip to go in there and get it. And after that, I felt redeemed a little bit for how that pack out went, because Casey, like I said, is like one of the gnarliest dudes I know. He's an absolute pack mule, and it took him that long to go in there and get half of it. So I did not feel bad for getting to the point that my brother and I did about with it, and I was more than happy to pay him for it because it was well worth the amount of time that he put into it. So that's probably my favorite story, just because I got to introduce my brother to elk hunting. I would say keep in mind he has never asked to go elk hunting since. I mean that honestly. Like, he was like, "Hey, I don't know if that's for me. I'll deer hunt again, but but elk hunting is rough." And it's just it to me, even though it wasn't a bull. The other story that I was kind of considering was a bull coming off the same mountain, but even though it wasn't a bull, it still to me epitomizes what elk hunting is, and that, like, you see them and you're like, "Yep, I want to go get them." And you have that drive, and you get one down, and you got this moment of celebration and achievement and accomplishment, and then the reality hits, and that reality is extremely humbling more often than not. And
It changes your body. I tell people all the time, like,
yeah,
you will for your body will forever be changed from packing out an elk sometimes. It
yeah,
just you just feel it, and you feel it for a while after that hunt on the gnarly stuff.
yeah,
But,
man. It beats you up, fries the central nervous system, beats up the joints, beats up the muscles. I mean, it's real. Like, it's very it is a different experience, and that's what makes it worth it. That's what makes it
type 2
awesome.
fun.
But yeah,
Everything
man,
everything about him is type 2 fun once you kill him.
the number of times I've had a thought of, like, man, if I had a red button, I would be tap dancing on this thing to press it and get out of here right now.
That's awesome, dude. Well, Greg Williams, Eberlestock. Go check out Eberlestock. Go check out their packs. You can hear just talking to Greg, like, this is a hunter building packs for hunters. So, Greg, man, let's do it again.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for having me, and excited to run your gear this year. It's awesome stuff, and I'm really happy for you in the obvious success that you're having, and going to continue to have. So the opportunity to sit down and talk with you is one of my favorite things about this industry. Some of the cool people that I get to interact with and share this passion with. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
Yep. Thank you.
Oh.